see Liegh, and I'm just going to tell you, take us to church, because I know that's what you're going to do.
Thank you, brother. 1992 to 1996 was a transition period for Prince, as evident by changing his name to an unpronounceable symbol, and by this time, the vast majority of his songs are him singing about having accomplished clarity, rather than singing about trying to find clarity. In a February 1997 interview with Chris Rock for VH1 to One, Prince clarifies his notion of past accomplishments, present journeys, and reconciling the two. Rock asks, quote, "Is this the done?" End quote. And Prince responds, quote, "My own personal done, it is, yes. It is a time period where you figure out where you're going, you've completely judged where you come from, and laid out all the pieces, and you now know exactly what it all means to that point." End quote. The best example of this is his song, "Welcome to the Dawn," from The Truth, which was released as part of the Crystal Ball collection in 1998. No longer waiting for the masses to understand or catch up, Prince is writing for those who want it, for those who want to know what clarity is. He sings, quote, "When the things you know are right are far from what they seem, when the past becomes future and time becomes a dream, when the light of God is the only thing life will redeem, welcome to the dawn," end quote. Prince is still preaching that to achieve this clarity, one must get comfortably and completely free of the lies and illusions of the physical world by listening to and reconciling oneself to the spiritual world. He continues, quote, "When the voice you hear commands that you entertain the absurd, and when you do, it unlocks the apocalypse of what you've heard. When the day that lies before you seems the darkest, in a word, welcome to the dawn," end quote. Yet to achieve clarity and the dawn, individuals must take responsibility for their own actions and their own growth. Thus, he ends with, quote, "Every piece of the puzzle and every nuance a clue. Every charge you make is karma, so be careful what you do," end quote. What is most clear is that Prince has found an inner peace by releasing his desire for fame and embracing his desire for completion, as articulated in two additional songs from the album, the title song, "The Truth," and "Don't Play Me." Noted journalist Jim Walsh, in his July 18, 1997 The Truth review for the St. Paul Pioneer Press, hits the nail on the head in showing the relevance of these two songs. Quote, "On the opening track of the mostly acoustic album, The Truth, the musician growls over a stark bluesy guitar riff worthy of Lightning Hopkins. Prince sings, quote, "Everybody's got a right to love, everybody's got a right to lie. The choice you make, it ain't no piece of cake, it ain't no motherfucking piece of pie," end quote. The Truth then is about facing up to and making choices, big ones, little ones, tough ones, easy ones. Over the course of his 39 years, the prolific Minneapolis artist has obviously been through changes that came from making such choices. As a result, this album, and even more spiritually and personal work than the highly spiritual Emancipation, is a roadmap to the lessons he has learned and the person he has become, end quote. A couple of years later, during his 1999 New Year's Eve concert, Rave to the Year 2000, which eventually became a DVD, Prince declares that, quote, "Time is a trick," end quote. While this has both a literal and metaphoric meaning, he is asserting that time, as a thing of measurement, has been co-opted and commodified as a way to instill fear into the masses, thereby controlling them to an overly capitalistic system that limits their ability to think, dream, and evolve to their highest selves. Thus, without this truth, of which Prince is singing throughout the entire album, humanity allows their fear and ignorance to lead them into the most primitive of behaviors, including slavery, colonization, rape, murder, theft, and more, because they don't know the truth that they are spiritual beings merely having a physical experience, and should be more concerned about what Prince says, quote, "They should invest more time into the bank of heaven rather than investing time into the bank of mankind," end quote. By showing listeners his journey, Prince is challenging them to evaluate how they conceptualize the truth. What is the truth? What defines the truth? What makes truth truth? Thus, in the song Truth, he sings, quote, "What if half the things ever said turned out to be a lie? How would you know the truth? If we were given all the answers, would you stop to wonder why? If time's only reason is to give us something to fear, and if so, y'all, the end of the journey is so clear," end quote. Prince is asserting that once humanity realizes what Aristotle attempted to show Plato, that there is not merely one formula for utopia or happiness, society becomes closer to that clarity. This is because people begin to comprehend that understanding and tolerance, not power and oppression, are the best examples of spiritual evolution. The truth is that humanity's power is in its diversity and people's willingness to relinquish the physical and love the various souls of humanity. Moreover, if individuals are not allowed to fulfill the destiny of human diversity, humanity will decay before reaching its potential, which is evident in the number of hate crimes and mass shootings that have continued to increase, despite the fact we keep putting people in jails. However, if people are ever able to fulfill this destiny and tell and know the truth, they will begin their transformation to becoming higher beings. Prince affirms this as he ends the truth with, quote, "We would all trade bank accounts and move to Neptune," end quote. With Neptune, of course, being a metaphor for utopia and humanity reaching its highest form, similar to how Stevie Wonder uses Saturn in the same type of metaphor in his song, of course, Saturn. Continuing the discussion of the importance of recognizing and telling the truth, the song Don't Play Me is a double assertion or double signifier. The obvious is, don't play me on the radio because I will not perpetuate the industry's lies. The undercurrent is, don't play me for a fool because I'm hip to your game. In both cases, Prince is asserting that the choices to market and sell an artist is as much political as they are cultural. He is not vilifying this. He is, however, asserting that the real crime is when people lie that politics have nothing to do with the decision to market and promote an artist. Yet Prince had realized this as early as 1981. In an interview with Auntie Schwartz for the New York Rocker, he states, quote, "You can look at the charts and you know for a fact that your record is better than some of the things that are over you. But I could look at it objectively and realize why those records are ahead of mine. It's all basically the business of politics," end quote. The choice or struggle for the artist is not acquiescing to be accepted and not remaining as slave labor, not remaining the stereotype that the system needs one to be for its own survival. Most typically, African-American artists are not allowed to evolve and grow in the manner as white artists. White acts are allowed to be artists in the full meaning of the term and celebrated for their artistry. African-Americans are celebrated for their hit-making ability. The system is constructed differently when it comes to nurturing the artistic visions of white artists as opposed to the African-American artists, so that album sales weigh more heavily on the careers of African-American artists than they do on the careers of white artists. Journalist Neil Carlin affirms this when he says, quote, "When Prince invested $10 million in the building Paisley Park, he was blasted by the press, which was saying, oh, he's crazy. That thing's never going to work. It's only going to be his little playpen, but it won't make any money." However, had he bought $10 million worth of cocaine, everybody would say, well, that's okay, end quote. The narrowing of the artistry and humanity of African-American artists functions not only to limit the amount of wealth they can generate, which narrows their ability to create their own sovereign institutions, it also functions to perpetuate them as one-dimensional sub-beings that justify the continued mistreatment, discrimination, and killing of them. However, Prince's career has been about defying the critics and surviving in the face of their criticism. As he states in Don't Play Me, quote, "I'm in the news again for paying dues, my friend. I'm not the type of gambler you prop in my way," end quote. The dues that he is paying is payment for his freedom and the punitive damages for abandoning the traditional methods of living and being. But these are dues that will pave the road for others who want to follow their own visions, especially African-American artists. Thus he adds, quote, "Don't play me. I'm the wrong color and I play guitar," end quote. Finally, after all these years, this was a clear assertion from Prince that his whole career had been a battle against the limits that the industry puts on African-American artists. He continues by indicting the industry for its racist and hypocritical practices. He sings, quote, "Don't be mad at me, the curtain puller in the game. Maybe how you call us niggas ain't the same," end quote. Yet, in the wink of an eye, the evolved writer shows that his peace and his reward comes from a higher place, a more honorable place, a more valuable place. He sings, quote, "It's all good to know the only fame is the light that comes from God and the joy you get from calling his name," end quote. The journalist Walsh further indicates that Prince is clear in his understanding that his banishment from television and radio has more to do with politics than it has to do with craft. Walsh states, quote, "On the spooky Don't Play Me, the former Prince fires at Bob at the music industry, Ebonics, and those who still see him as that precocious imp who flashed his butt on the MTV Music Awards a couple hundred songs ago. He offers this declaration of independence. Prince sings, quote, "Don't play me. I'm over 30 and I don't smoke weed. I put my ass away in the music I play. I ain't the type of stereo you trying to feed. I use proper English and I'm straight. I've been to the mountaintop and it ain't what you say," end quote. Prince is able to resign himself to the notion that Although he, as every artist, wants his work to be heard by as many people as possible, it is not worth selling his soul or having his messages so diluted that getting a record deal and releasing his work defeats the purpose of being an artist. Walsh also affirms this, quote, in the end, however, the truth attempts not to ask questions, but to answer them. As the artist sings on the title track, quote, the question is, what did you stand for? The question is, who did you save? When it gets down to the nitty and the gritty, did you take more than you gave? End quote. To be clear, this album is a blues album, but much like the Juneteenth, it's a celebration of and by blues people who have always been able to churn their pain into defiance and victory. A blues expression is not an expression of defeat, but an acknowledgement of the bad and of faith and a determination that the sun will eventually shine again because troubles don't last always. Prince finds peace in knowing that art is supposed to uplift and that humanity's purpose on earth is to make life better. He does not want to be part of a culture whose main goal is to rape society for all his work, never reciprocating to balance the scale and cycle of life. Many white critics and white patriots live vicariously through black art and is often produced from black pain. But those same white critics and same white patriots rarely pay those artists what they're worth or even celebrate them in a way that enables the art to be used to change or improve the negative circumstance of black life. Furthermore, there's also a deeper truth that Prince's defiance is still a heavy and difficult road to travel. Diana Dawkins, editor of the Prince Family newsletter, raises some issues along these lines in her review of the truth and her assessment of Prince's general behavior since his break with Warner Brothers. Dawkins writes, quote, I have to admit to a little confusion. We've all heard Prince say, I'm a free man, I'm a happy man, in several recent interviews. This album does not sound like the work of a free, happy man. There are many tracks here of bitterness and discontent, including a continuation of Prince's dissatisfaction with the recording industry, sentiments we thought had long been left behind. Almost every track on this album looks backwards. The ones that aren't bitter are wistful and melancholy. We are also confused as to why this album is not available for purchase, even though it's been complete for many months. Wasn't that one of the reasons that Prince left Warner Brothers to get his music out faster? End quote. Though many of Miss Dawkins' assertions are correct, she fails to realize that Prince probably had to deal with a transition period that he didn't expect. Being on a major label has its perks. Your album is in every store, your record is on the radio, and your touring expenses are covered, even if the costs are later deducted from your earnings. It costs money to press CDs. It costs money to mail complimentary and promotional copies of those CDs, and it costs money to book engagements. These were things that Prince was used to Warner Brothers doing for him, or at least they were providing him a budget to do it. Now he does not have the luxury of the machine backing him. This does not mean, however, that he regrets his choices to leave Warner Brothers, but we all have a tendency because of our physical nature to become addicted and dependent upon the machine. The sadness or melancholy nature of the truth is not one of regret, but it's one that acknowledges that individuality and independence are always a struggle, even though the rewards are great. In short, freedom ain't free, people, and the truth is the mantra of an artist who wants others to know that freedom is obtainable, but it's a struggle to obtain. So only the strong should get free and come with me. While another song, Animal Kingdom, does not on the surface seem to be in the same vein as the rest of the album, it is classic Prince, as it contains a bluesy gospel grind that supports Prince's new age philosophy of veganism, which is a metaphor that for Prince, physical ills and sins are merely byproducts of spiritual perversion. Or to put it another way, to eat the flesh of another living being for Prince is merely a manifestation that one does not understand and appreciate the beauty and significance of all creatures created by Yahweh. For Prince, the capture, murder, and colonization of other animals for food is no different than one human being enslaving or colonizing another human being for profit. To be clear, y'all, I'm a meat eater. As a matter of fact, as soon as this presentation is complete, I'm going to go hunt me some flesh to devour, preferably with some hot sauce or some barbecue sauce, Mississippi in the house. Yet I understand, respect, and love two things about Animal Kingdom. One, it shows that Prince's art is a catalog or barometer of his social, political, and spiritual journey as he continuously attempted to become his best self, even if that meant reversing course on several of his ideologies. Two, regardless of the subject matter, blues and gospel are the primary components of his artistry, as his entire career was concerned with creating secularized spirituals to uplift, inform, and inspire his listeners. And though we may not always agree with Prince's message or ideology at a particular time, fans have appreciated, for the most part, Prince's lyrical ability to provide an interesting perspective on life merely as a way to cause people to think more critically about their beliefs and actions. The end goal or result of an artist is not always to change drastically what people do, but to have them consider alternative methods of accomplishing a goal or to consider the negative consequences of their actions. So while I still eat meat, I appreciate Animal Kingdom's ability to cause me to evaluate my humanity by how I treat other living things. He sings, quote, "What about the clams on the shore? Here comes the fisherman's soul no more. No member of the animal kingdom ever did a thing to me. It's why I don't eat red meat or white fish. Don't give me no funky blue cheese. We're all animals. We're all members of the animal kingdom. Leave your brothers and sisters in the sea," end quote. Then, as a master of lyrical duality, Prince takes this same message of the importance of connecting with other living organisms and makes it even plainer in Circle of Amour by showing that it is the relationships that people develop and maintain that give meaning to this existential world. As Prince does with most of his songs, especially his songs with a sexual theme, Circle of Amour can be read two ways: as a song about four girls discovering the joys of sex together, or a song merely about platonic friendship. Either way, the message of the song is that friends, the time that one shares with friends, and the memories that one makes with friends are what make life worth living. He sings, quote, "Memories seldom stray. No loser in this circle game because the memories are worth so much more," end quote. In an album that's clearly about rejecting or abandoning the pursuit of money, fame, and status, this song, Circle of Amour, about friendship and intimacy, be it romantic or platonic, continues Prince's assertion that only love can enable human beings to transcend the physical world and achieve their ultimate completion and joy. The songs on the entire album, The Truth, show that Prince's artistic quest is not merely about crafting hits. It is about fighting arbitrary definitions and fighting the people who desire to define our world for us. Art and truth are subjective, and the published notions of each are as widely fickle as they are opinions. As Aristotle asserts, individuals desire happiness, but they desire it all differently. Prince's discourse has been to make listeners face their subjective realities and not be hypocritical about them. This is humanity's first step toward freedom and evolution. The second step is accepting who we are and then working to evolve to a higher form. Prince's work proves that freedom, no matter how difficult the struggle, no matter how lonely the road, is worth whatever one must endure to gain it. One can only evolve when one breaks free of the lies and the illusion of the physical. Further still, true emancipation means being able to break free of the lies that cause fear and selfishness so that people are able to love. Loving others is an emancipation that comes when we believe that love, not money, will save us. As the man asserts in The Love We Make from Emancipation, quote, "The only love there is the love we make," end quote. As such, in The Truth, Prince is making it clear that humanity has the ability to reach perfection, paradise, and utopia, but it will take a major intellectual and spiritual development that can be a most difficult journey, but it is a journey that be completed. I thank y'all for listening to me, and happy birthday to my grandson, Joshua. Joshua, Granddaddy Dynamite loves you. I'm out, y'all.
Whew. All right. Thank you so much, Liegh. You've given us even more to think about in addition to Camila's presentation.